This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. If you missed our 32-episode Season 1, Dark History, watch the full playlist on our channel. They say some secrets stay buried beneath the sand, but sometimes those secrets find their way back to the road. Maybe that's exactly what happened in the heart of the Nevada desert. There lies a highway where time once stopped, where cars kept driving, only to return to the same curve again and again, as if life itself had drawn a circle. But the question remains, was it just a road, or was something else waiting there? Under the blinding Nevada sun, the desert highways shimmered like a mirage. It was July 2011, a scorching afternoon, when the air itself seemed to burn. Drivers moved in long, silver lines toward Las Vegas and Reno, their cars slicing through the horizon like tiny, determined insects. And then, everything stopped. At first, no one thought much of it. A jam on Highway 95 wasn't unheard of. Maybe construction, maybe an accident. But as minutes turned into an hour, and the heat inside those idling cars began to suffocate, something about it felt wrong. No one saw a wreck, no sirens, no flashing lights. Just stillness. An eerie stillness that stretched as far as the eye could see, miles of trapped travelers staring through windshields, wondering what invisible hand had frozen them in place. People stepped out of their cars, shielding their eyes. A woman from Carson City fanned herself with a map. A trucker muttered that his radio had gone dead, not out of range, just static. Another man climbed onto the roof of his SUV to get a better look. He saw nothing. No roadwork, no smoke. Just a sea of vehicles and the hot, endless desert. And then came the strangest thing of all, the movement. For a moment, cars ahead began to roll forward. Engines revved, drivers cheered. Relief swept through the line. But then, just half a mile later, the jam returned, abruptly, like a wave that surged and fell back in the same place. It wasn't moving forward. It was looping. A traffic jam that seemed to fold back on itself. By the second hour, people began to notice something unsettling. The same red pickup truck kept passing. A woman in a blue hat who had been behind them 20 minutes ago was suddenly ahead again. A cyclist, part of a roadside charity ride, swore he'd seen the same cluster of vehicles twice, same license plates, same people arguing in the same car. It made no sense. The Nevada Highway Patrol was alerted. They sent officers to investigate. But even from the air, from a helicopter dispatched out of Tonopah, the report came back strangely vague. "There's a backup on the highway," one officer radioed. "But I can't find the start of it." He flew further west. The cars continued further east. The same repeating stream of vehicles that should have ended, but didn't. It was as if the road itself had folded. The stretch where this occurred, near the old ghost town of Coaldale, carries its own shadows. Once a booming mining town, it died abruptly in the 1950s. Locals still talk about the Coaldale Echo, a strange phenomenon where sounds from the highway bounce back hours later, replaying fragments of passing traffic like ghosts trapped in the sand. Scientists chalk it up to the valley's acoustics, the basin's shape, the dry air, the temperature layers that bend sound. But those who live there, or drive that road too often, whisper something else. The desert remembers. In the weeks after the incident, a few travelers described sensations that chilled them. A man who pulled over during the jam claimed that when he stepped away from his car, the air changed. The sound of engines faded, replaced by silence so absolute it felt like pressure. Another said the sunlight seemed to dim, as though the day itself were caught in replay. He checked his watch. It was 2:17 p.m. 20 minutes later, still 2:17. His phone battery drained to 0 in seconds, out of all the accounts gathered later. One stood out from a retired systems engineer named Douglas Hart. He was driving a white Ford Econoline van packed with experimental, radar equipment heading to a weather research site north of Tanapa. Hart was meticulous, the kind of man who logged mileage and fuel efficiency just for curiosity. When the jam began, he started recording. His notes show something chilling. He recorded the time of stoppage, 1:38 p.m. He logged forward movement, 2:02 p.m. Then, at 2:14 p.m., he wrote, "Same vehicles passing again." He marked the odometer. Between 1:38 and 2:14, it advanced only 0.8 miles. But by 2:45 it had gone backward. The reading was lower than before. Hart thought it was a mechanical glitch until his dashcam confirmed it. His footage, later analyzed by the Nevada Department of Transportation, showed something unnerving. The landscape repeated, the same tumbleweed crossing, the same hitchhiker waving, the same cracked billboard reading cold beer and gas next exit. Looped, frame by frame. The horizon didn't change, it reset. At mile marker 112, there's a small dip in the road, nothing remarkable. Just a shallow descent into a basin, but that's where radar signals, both civilian and military, drop out. GPS flickers. Compass needles drift a few degrees east. It's a known anomaly among truckers. They call it the hollow stretch. For decades, it's been blamed on magnetized ore deposits buried under the desert, a remnant of old mining activity. But according to a declassified Air Force document from 1978, that same region was once used for radar calibration tests. Project Goliath, experimental ground-based wave emitters, designed to distort radar signatures for stealth development. The testing stopped after local pilots reported navigation failures and visual mirages, phantom reflections of terrain that didn't exist. But what if something remained? A week after the 2011 event, local authorities flew a drone over the area. It was meant to gather footage for traffic pattern analysis, but the drone operator noticed something uncanny. In the raw footage, at timestamp 0 hours, 42 minutes, and 17 seconds, cars can be seen moving smoothly, almost like normal traffic. Then, within a single frame, everything jumps back. License plates that were ahead appear behind again. A silver sedan merges twice, in identical fashion. Even the shadows reset, falling back to a previous position. The footage was quietly stored in a state transport database, inaccessible to the public. But in 2018, a data breach leaked fragments online, pixelated clips titled NV-Loop Footage 2011. Skeptics dismissed them as editing errors, but the metadata contained unaltered GPS times, and those timestamps repeated. Among the dozens trapped that day, one man simply disappeared. His name was reported as James Delenia, 34-year-old traveling salesman from Sacramento. Witnesses recall seeing him walking along the shoulder, trying to find the end of the jam. He carried a bottle of water and a small leather briefcase. He never reached the next town. A week later, his car was still parked on the highway shoulder, unlocked, radio still playing static. No signs of struggle. No footprints past a certain point. But here's the part that confounds every timeline. 3 days after his disappearance, his wife received a phone call. It lasted only 12 seconds. She later told investigators, "It was him." He said, "I'm still on the road, but no one's moving. The sun hasn't changed." Then the line went dead. Phone records traced the call. It came from his own number. At 2:17 p.m., the exact time the loop was logged. In 2013, two transportation engineers, Lisa Romero and Thomas Feld, analyzed GPS telemetry from that day. They noticed subtle rhythm in the signal dropouts. Every 6 minutes and 14 seconds, a cluster of pings vanished, then reappeared. displaced by less than a mile. It wasn't random interference. It was cyclical. Their report, published briefly before being withdrawn, hypothesized localized temporal distortion caused by overlapping electromagnetic fields. The paper was mocked by peers, but their data aligned perfectly with witness testimonies. At 6-minute intervals, engines would die, clocks would stutter, and some claimed they could hear echoes, faint repetitions of voices, like arguments from a few minutes before, replaying in the dry air. A trucker recalled hearing his own CB transmission played back seconds after he stopped talking, identical down to the static crackle. In 2016, Dr. Richard Vance, a geologist from the University of Nevada, proposed a physical explanation. He believed a large quartz deposit under the Coaldale Basin, combined with nearby high-voltage transmission lines, could create a piezoelectric feedback loop generating electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disrupt electronics and even perception. But his research never accounted for the time discrepancies. Watches didn't just stop, some jumped backward. One dashcam caught sunlight flickering as if clouds passed, yet the sky was perfectly clear. Was it just a mirage, or something bending more than just light? For years, the 2011 incident was dismissed as desert folklore, until 2018. On a late September afternoon, a convoy of long-haul trucks experienced another standstill near the same stretch. The first driver, hauling refrigeration units, reported over the radio, "Traffic ahead's dead still. No brake lights. Just still." Another driver behind him said, "It's like déjà vu." When highway patrol arrived 30 minutes later, there were no vehicles. None. The stretch of road was empty, but along the shoulder, tire impressions were fresh, hundreds of them, perfectly aligned, leading nowhere. The asphalt was hot, but the tire tracks were cold to the touch. That section of road was quietly repaved a month later. The official explanation: surface deformation due to heat. In 2019, a Freedom of Information request unearthed something unexpected, an internal memo from the Nevada Department of Transportation. Dated August 2011, it mentioned the Highway 95 incident, describing it as a repeating traffic sequence lasting approximately 1 hour and 53 minutes. The document was marked closed, resolved through system sync. No further explanation, but an attached note, handwritten in pencil, read, "Advise Caltrans not to sync traffic cams with NVDOT servers again, same loop issue." That single line implied the unthinkable. The loop might not have been physical at all, but digital, a feedback between live camera systems, creating recursive data that somehow projected into real-world infrastructure. But how could a software loop cause vehicles, people, and time itself to repeat, unless something in that desert wasn't entirely digital? In 2020, an amateur radio enthusiast named Colin Meyer tried to retrace the incident. He drove through the Coaldale Basin with a high-frequency scanner, hoping to pick up anomalies. At 2:15 p.m., the same window logged in 2011, his scanner emitted a burst of static. Then, faintly, a human voice. It said, "This is James. I'm still on the road." The signal vanished. Meyer checked his GPS log. The timestamp was exactly 2:17. When he posted the recording online, skeptics dismissed it as a prank, but in the background, amid the static, you can hear something else: faint engine noise, a radio playing, an old weather forecast, and a woman crying softly. In satellite images taken by Google Earth that same year, an odd pattern appeared near the old Coaldale Junction, a short, curved service road that didn't lead anywhere. It wasn't on any map before. When people drove there, it wasn't physically present, just flat desert. But on satellite updates, it shifted positions. Each update showed it slightly altered, like something struggling to stabilize. Some researchers believe this phantom road is an algorithmic artifact, a glitch caused by overlapping map data. Others aren't so sure. When coordinates from Hart's original 2011 GPS log were overlaid on those satellite frames, they intersected perfectly with that shifting road. For years, the survivors tried to move on. Some gave interviews, others stayed silent. A woman named Angela Miller, who'd been trapped in the jam with her 2 children, later described recurring dreams. We're still there. Same heat, same sun. Every time I look back, it's the same car behind me, the same man drinking from a bottle. He never finishes it. It's like he's stuck mid-sip. Psychologists labeled it stress-induced repetition memory, the mind-looping trauma. But Angela swears that sometimes, when driving through quiet desert roads, her radio picks up static, and then a faint echo of children's laughter, her own from that day. Former Air Force radar technician Michael Caine claimed that, around the same time, in 2011, an off-the-books calibration test was being conducted at the nearby Tonopah test range using ground-based resonance emitters to simulate radar ghost signatures. He said, if those frequencies overlapped with civilian systems, it could create echo returns, even visual ones. When asked if those echoes could affect time perception, he paused. Not unless the signals were phased perfectly out of sync, which would be impossible to control. But what if for a brief moment they were? On a clear night, in August 2022, a dashcam from a passing tourist bus captured something faint but unmistakable near mile marker 112, faint red taillights appearing in midair, flickering, then fading. Traffic control reviewed the footage. No other vehicles were reported on the highway at that time. Still, those lights reappeared 3 times that night, each time lasting exactly 6 minutes and 14 seconds. The same rhythm, the same pulse. Today, the stretch of Highway 95, near Coaldale, looks unremarkable, just another lonely ribbon of asphalt, cutting through miles of empty, golden silence. Tourists speed past without a thought, the sun glaring in their mirrors. But some locals won't drive that section after noon. They say the light changes there that shadows lag behind, and sometimes, when the air is still, and the horizon wavers like heat on glass, you can see distant cars that aren't really there, engines humming, sunlight frozen, a convoy of travelers caught in a loop forever, waiting for the road ahead to clear, because maybe, on that day in 2011, something happened that science still can't define, a fracture in time, or space, or something between both. And perhaps, just perhaps, those people are still out there, driving, looping, forever. Some say, it was nothing more than an optical illusion. But for those who watched time repeat itself on that road, it became a moment they could never forget. Sometimes, time doesn't stop, it simply forces us to live the same moment again. If you found this story haunting, make sure to subscribe, and don't forget to explore our Unsolved Paranormal Events playlist for more mysteries that refuse to fade.